So welcome to our ninth and last session of the live talk series, everyone. Hi, Jen, Kim, Karen, thank you so much for being here. I think the three of you have been to most of the sessions that I've hosted. So thank you so much for your commitment and your support. As you know, this series was started because of my friend Maggie Ng, who died by suicide. And this was a way for me to honor her memory and also helping me to process my grief. And I've had some really amazing guest co-hosts. And today I have Andrew here to help me on this journey. And I usually share a little memory about her each time. So today's little memory is actually the first time I ever met Maggie. She was doing my hair and makeup for a charity gala. This was, I think, 6-7 years ago. And I was very sick that day with something. And I told her, I said, Meg, she said, what do you want to do for your hair? I said, could you just make a hairdo that I can nap in, please? And she's like, this is the first time anyone has ever asked for that kind of hairdo. And I think from there, our friendship just grew because we're just both really kind of strange and weird. And actually, Maggie and I were supposed to host a podcast together to talk about our entrepreneurial journey and all the funny things that we have experienced. So, this talk series is kind of bittersweet because this was something that Maggie and I were going to do together. And so you have an opportunity to donate to the Hong Fook Mental Health Foundation. The link is in the email and it's in Maggie's honor. So that's Maggie. And that's why I ended up hosting this chat series. So you already know all of you here, so you don't have to say hi in the chat. I already know that you're here, you're all in Toronto. Thank you so much for joining. And those of you who are watching the replay afterwards, thank you so much for your support as well. So this is what you can expect today. So my guest co-host is Andrew Johnson. I'm going to introduce him fully in just a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about our hopes for what is to come for mental health care. And I have a little clip from Dr. Gabor Mate, whom you know is kind of my obsession and also my teacher in compassionate inquiry. I have a little clip from him about what he hopes for the future of mental health. And I also have a quote from my psychiatrist who has been amazing taking care of me and my healing journey for the past, like 11 years. So I have something from him that I want to share. And then, of course, we're going to talk about any questions that you might have. And as always, if you have questions for me or for Andrew or comments, please just pop it into the chat and Andrew and I will pause our talk to address those as we see them. So here is a little bit about Andrew. So I actually met Andrew in person a couple of months ago now. He lives in Hamilton. And I got to meet him in person because we were connected by another Andrew, who was part of the live talk series, a few sessions, who is now the executive director of Hong Fook. So he said, there's this guy you really have to meet. You're going to really love him and learn so much. And that was Andrew Johnson. So the other Andrew connected me with this Andrew. And it was one of the most enlightening meetings I had. I think we talked for like 2 hours. It was just, I felt like I could talk to him for like days more. And there's so much I want to absorb from him. So Andrew has been working at CAMH, Center for Addiction and Mental Health, for 25 years. Can you imagine? He doesn't look that old, right? But he's been there for 25 years. He leads the patient and family education program, as well as the CAMH publications for CAMH education. So he's been really leading the scale up of the Collaborative Learning College as well, which was formerly named Recovery College. And also he leads the RBC Patient and Family Learning Space. So this guy does a lot of different things. but really important things that make a huge difference. And I asked him for a fun fact about him, and he told me that he collects vinyl records and he's a DJ. So actually behind him, you can see all of those records. And that's why when I asked him, what's an intro song you would like me to play, he knew right away. So that was pretty cool. So DJ Andrew, welcome. And thank you for being here. And I know you all know me really well by now, so I don't really need to give you an introduction, but the people who are watching the replay, here is a little bit about me. And I want to also mention that you are in the right place if you or someone you care about live with mental health challenges. We would love for you to keep an open mind, especially for today, because we're going to be sharing kind of like our hopes and dreams for mental health in the future. And trigger warning, as always, please exercise self-care. If you need to leave, if you need to take a pause, please do so, and nobody would be offended. And we don't have all the answers. We know what we know, and we're going to share from our experiences. Andrew and I are not qualified to give any medical or diagnostic advice. So those are things that you will need to definitely go for professional support. And I'm going to stop the PowerPoint as soon as we start our chat. And then I'm going to restart the PowerPoint again when I show the clips from Dr. Gabor Mate. So right now I'm just going to stop sharing and then we can start our talk. Awesome. So Andrew, here's the big question. What would you like for the future of mental health?
What would I like for the future of mental health? That's a fairly broad way to start. So
I figured, let's just aim high, and then we'll see where it goes.
In a lot of ways, I'm kind of glimpsing the future of mental health in forums like this. By which I mean this. We as a society have become much, much, much more open to talking about mental health, mental illness, and not keeping it hidden, keeping it layered with shame and stigma, and that is an important, very important, evolution of the way that we think about ourselves. And, because one of the things that we know is that for people who are dealing with mental health problems, the gap between identifying a problem and seeking treatment is absolutely crucial, and that the sooner that people can be attended to, the better their outcomes are going to be, and this has been shown in study after study after study, and so therefore, the more that we attack stigma and self-discrimination in that sense, the faster we're going to get to a situation where people are being treated much sooner.
Yeah, I really like that vision. And since you're not asking me, I'll ask myself. I think my hope for the future is that no one will come up to me and say, wow, Yolanda, that was so brave of you to share your story, because it wouldn't even seem odd for me to talk about my story of living with a mental health condition. So that's really, in a nutshell, what I see in the future, is that no one is going to ever say to me that I'm courageous or brave, or because it's just me sharing about something I deal with.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, normalizing the conversation uh,
Yeah,
is really the first step. I hope that you would agree, and please tell me if you don't. That I think we all live on a continuum of better and worse mental health, and that having a diagnosis of a mental health condition is not the sum total of a person. That there are many ways to be mentally very healthy and walk around with a diagnosis of a primary mental health disorder. Would you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. My good friend Karen is here, and she has really seen me in all kinds of different ways. Um, she was there when I was hospitalized last year for having, a manic episode, and she's heard me talk when I'm feeling really crappy in a depressive episode. So it is a continuum, right? It's not like I'm not like this every day. Actually, I don't wear makeup every day either, but like I'm like they're replays, right? I want to like look okay. But yeah, it's not like there is some kind of a destination with mental health that I'm working towards. I remember one of my psychiatrists from Sunnybrook, I loved her reminder. She said, Yolanda, you're not running a sprint. This is a marathon. You got to take things day by day. And that's why, before the talk, Andrew, you and I were talking about this, that one of the things we both quite dislike is when people share about triumphs as if that is the end all and be all, but really the battles are fought in the trenches. It's those daily decisions that you make to get out of bed, to take your medication, to go out for a walk. I mean, those I think are the true victories. And they're not really talked about a lot. And you mentioned my friend, Maggie, like, some people might think that um, it's not a good thing that she made that choice, but I think it's a really brave choice as well, because that was the best choice for her at the time with everything that she was dealing with and everything that she had in terms of support. Yeah, yeah, long way of answering. Yes, I 100% agree with what you said. Um, so I'm curious, I don't think I ever asked you this actually. Why did you choose to work in mental health?
The truth of the matter is that in a lot of ways it chose me. I
Mm.
kind of like a lot of people who get into a career. Um, you you find yourself in a situation, and sometimes you find that you're thriving there. My where we started here, we were talking about music. My big dream was to be a writer and to write about music. And one thing led to another, and I was able to apply for a job at the Center for what was then the Addiction Research Foundation to be a proofreader in their publications program, and that was the proverbial foot in the door for me. And from there, I was invited to lead like big um, what we would call well, like big projects to help primary care physicians do better at, and not physicians exclusively, nurses, counselors, but largely physicians, to do better at treating people with substance use disorders. And that kind of capacity building work led me to do a lot more advocacy work and to then get into doing things like the collaborative learning college and the patient and family learning space. in a lot of ways the patient and family learning space work, and that is really founded around helping people develop their own health literacy, their own mental health literacy, and their system navigation skills. That was built on us doing a lot of publications, of being really good at explaining what various aspects of the mental health system look like, what a mental health disorder is, what treatment options are, to do it in a way that was really supportive and not judgy, not kind of talking down to people. And yeah, and so that work then led to doing kind of primary education, inviting people into creating spaces for people to come and ask their questions in a direct way, and to have their questions answered as best we can.
Yeah. And so speaking of, your work in expanding and scaling up the collaborative recovery, no, sorry, collaborative learning college,
Yep.
which was formerly recovery college.
Yeah, the
And
CAMH
that's,
Recovery College, we called it.
sorry,
We used to call it the CAMH Recovery College.
yeah. And well, this was one of the reasons I was connected with you, because I found that model to be so interesting. And it's one that I never knew about when I was in I'm always going to be in my recovery journey, but I just didn't know about it. So could you tell us a little bit more about that model? And I really feel like you're working on something that is shaping the future of mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I could. I've got a dog in the background here. I'm just going to close the door.
Yeah, sure.
This is the way we do it in 2023.
Yeah, I have a dog too, but he's not in my background. He's, I think, in Brian's background right now.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So you started to ask me about the recovery college model.
Yeah.
So the recovery college is low barrier, strengths based, recovery oriented education. And and for your listeners, the key piece of this work is that every course is either created or co-created, facilitated or co-facilitated by people with living or lived experience. And in order to deliver recovery oriented education in the most effective way, it's people need to experience recovery, and to see that their peers who are in front of them are living successfully with mental health challenges, substance use challenges, addiction challenges, and yet find ways to flourish. Like we were talking about a moment ago, it's not going to, people are still going to struggle or have their own challenges in their lives, but it's not everything that defines them. They can still, run a creative writing course. They can still help to teach people about how to write a resume. They can still talk to people about how to fix a bike. And these examples, I think that'll probably jump out to people, aren't primarily about dealing with your quote mental health problem. They are courses that people are just interested in, and that they use education and those kind of skills that they get out of the collaborative learning college in order to support their overall long-term recovery. And for some people, that might be, well, I think I'll feel a lot better if I get a job, and I'm going to feel a lot more, a lot more autonomy. And I think I'm ready for a job, but I'm not sure how to do it. So, we can support people that way. For other people, it's like, what? I used to ride a bike when I was a kid. I'd love to get back on a bike. And but I've got this old Raleigh in the back there that I need to fix up. How do I go about doing it? we can teach people some very practical kinds of things, and then they can use that in thinking about what's next. Who am I as in the fullness of my being as a person?
Yeah, and I think it also provides so much agency for people who may have thought that their life is um, going to be forever changed with a diagnosis or hospitalization, because I certainly felt that way um, myself when I first got diagnosed. And I'm actually, I told you this, Andrew, but I'm actually taking one of the courses. I will be in 2 weeks, the creative writing course. Yay! Because it really focuses a lot on helping people to tell their stories. And I don't know, maybe there's a book in me. I don't know, but I think having the support in the community would be really incredible. And another really amazing thing about this model is that you are giving so much more purpose to not only people with lived experience, but people who are co-creating these programs too, because they're not only helping somebody, but they're also utilizing their own experiences in a way that empowers them, but empowers other people too. Because for the first time, I wrote on my resume bipolar disorder, 23 years as a skill, because it actually is, I realized, because that's the one thing I've done or lived with or dealt with the longest of everything else, longer than engineering, longer than teaching, longer than coaching, speaking, everything else I have not done as long as living with bipolar disorder. And it was really heartwarming and validating. I remember when I talked to you, to know that lived experience has value, even though I always thought it was a bad thing, you know?
You and I hope that you would agree with this. In my mind, are involved in acts of transformational leadership. You've got this platform that you've created here, your ongoing advocacy work. I know you're going to speak at the gala in a few weeks,
Mhm.
the Hong Fu Gala, and these are ways to declare that experience is a form of expertise, and by putting that on a resume, I think, to kind of echo an earlier point, like a lot of people are going to say, wow, that's really brave that you were willing to do that.
Mhm.
Whereas I think that, for in the right situation, I don't need everyone to declare what their mental health background is, their addiction background. If people get to tell their own stories, but if that is part of the story that you want to tell and put it in front of people, if they reflect on it, that becomes a really interesting part of who you are and what you're bringing as a whole person. um, yeah, I think it, the work that we're trying to do at the Center for Addiction Mental Health is to bring that expertise through experience, to the forefront, and to allow people to recognize that there's a great deal of value there, and that they should be able to use that in order to uh, get a job, or to speak from their own position. Would you not agree that, like, um, being able to bring your whole self forward in all situations is really one of the more empowering things that one can do? you're an engineer, you're a mom, you're a public speaker, and you bring a background that involves having bipolar disorder. That's your whole person. Why would you ever want to not embrace that whole person?
Well, not that long ago, I didn't, right? And I think um, many people for various reasons struggle with being able to show up as all of them. So one of my friends here, Carol, who was also a guest co-host from a previous session, I just saw her speech. It was amazing on stage where she talked about her own bipolar journey. And I have so many, there's so many intersection points between my experience and her experience, but I've never heard it that way until I saw her speech. And I think that is a powerful resonance that happens when you can see yourself, hear yourself echoed back to you in a way that's not negative anymore. Because I kept this a secret. I didn't talk about my bipolar journey until 2020 during the pandemic, because it was never a good thing. No one ever told me that this is a good thing, that lived experience is actually valuable. And that's why Andrew Chung was like, you got to meet Andrew Johnson. Like, this is something you really need to know about. And it's validating. And that's also why I reach out to you. I was like, I need you to speak at this last session because it is the future. And it kind of reminds me to ask you, like, about accessibility to these programs, because I never knew about it. No one has ever referred me to a recovery college or CLC program before. And as you know, I mentioned I run a courage circle for women living with bipolar disorder. And one of the women in the circle actually did benefit from the programs at CAMH, the CLC programs. But I said, how did you know about it? Because I didn't know. I know Carol didn't know. Like, we didn't know about these programs that we could be a part of. So tell me more about accessibility. Like, who gets interested or who gets invited or who gets access to the programs?
Well, so I think that you're putting your finger on one of the challenges of just working in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Is communications, trying to get the word out. And I think that it's a common challenge for I think that's a common challenge for most not-for-profits, community-based organizations, and yeah, so we use pretty well all of the kind of quote social marketing strategies that we can. I'm here to talk about the history, or the our hope for mental health services. I can talk about the history if you like, but part of the thing that I'm trying to do here is to do exactly what you're talking about, which is raise awareness, so that all the folks who are here and who may look at this in the future might look at the Collaborative Learning College, as being a spot where they can find an inclusive space that meets their needs. You know, and then beyond that, it's as I say, it's just an ongoing challenge to kind of get the word out. And it's frustrating sometimes when people say, well, boy, I would have really loved to know about that, and why aren't you getting out there and shouting from the rooftops? All I can say is that if anyone else has another platform that I can come and do a talk at, or share the word about what we're doing, I'm more than happy to always say yes.
I know Carol would love to get you. I'm sure. I saw her eyes light up when you said that. So don't worry, I'll connect you guys. Because Carol has a really great platform as well. So I think that it's sort of the obstacle and the solution at the same time. You know, the traditional care model is you go to your family doctor, you have this issue, and they refer you to a psychiatrist, maybe, depending on availability. And it's really, that's really it. Then you go to your psychiatrist and they give you medication. You see them for 20 minutes, maybe every other week or every, I don't know, whatever, 3 weeks. And oh, thank you for the, yeah, thank you for the link there. And I will include this link in my follow-up email as well, so that people can find it. And I'll put it in the YouTube descriptions. So yeah, so then you go see your doctor, your psychiatrist every other week. They tweak the medications. You're kind of like just going to wait until something happens. Sometimes you get a misdiagnosis and then you go back and just back and forth. Maybe along the way you get hospitalized and then you go back to the care of your psychiatrist again. At least that's been my journey and the journey of many others that I've talked to. But I don't even know if the psychiatrists or the family doctors know very much about other kinds of support structures that are available to people. Because when I was released from Sunnybrook last year, I didn't hear about anything at CAMH, but I was offered peer support calls every other week from Hope and Me. I know they collaborate with CAMH as well. And that was brand new to me. My first time being hospitalized, definitely did not know about that. And so I think things are slowly happening, but it is an obstacle with the traditional model of how care is given, and what is part of that package is not so clear, I think, to the medical professionals. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I think I couldn't agree more. That the traditional models haven't really embraced these types of initiatives, and I'm really grateful for the fact that some of the leadership at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health definitely recognize this as a gap. The story that I tell to a lot of people, or the kind of line that I use, is that the Center for Addiction and Mental Health and other kind of specialty mental health facilities are really great at helping people deal with their acute mental health problems, but they do not set people up for long-term recovery. And so thankfully that was recognized, and we were invited to try to address that as a gap, and to do so in a way that was not traditional. Going back to some of those course examples that I gave earlier, we are not a clinical program. As close as we come, we help people with their kind of wellness through, say, offering things like mindfulness courses and the like. But this is not about how to get well with bipolar disorder, for example, and um, and the and and to use education as a kind of different modality. One of the things that we think about, in the context of the Collaborative Learning College, is this change of identity. A lot of people come into the Collaborative Learning College with a long history of treatment within the mental health system. They have been regarded as being patients for much of their lives. If we think about the age of onset for mental health disorders as mid-teens to late 20s, that's a long time that a lot of people have been in this recipient of mental health services kind of role. When they come to the Collaborative Learning College, they are not patients. They are um, students, and in doing so, they have this opportunity to no longer be in that patient role. They have a lot more agency. They can think about a different horizon. They can think about where they want to take their lives through education. That's not just defined by their mental health diagnosis or experience.
And I think that's such a powerful shift in the narrative. And it's a really, really important one. Because I mentioned to you, at Hanfuk, the nomenclature is client. So all the people that participate in the programs are clients of Hanfuk, not patients. And I think it's just such a amazing like shift. And speaking of Hanfuk, so my background is Chinese. I'm Chinese Canadian, and I did not know Hanfuk existed until my friend passed away, and I was trying to channel my grief somewhere and found out about Hanfuk, and became their keynote for the gala. And so that concept of accessibility, information, sharing, it's really hard. There's definitely some obstacles for that as well. So I'm going to pause and just mention something Carol said here. She said, I also think there's a lack of communication between various facilities and other support services beyond. Absolutely. Yeah. Did you want to comment on that?
Well, I
Do you want Carol to comment on that or me?
Oh, sure. Carol, you go ahead.
Yeah, please.
sorry. No, Andrew, go for it. I was like, yes, I do, but no, I'm not.
Oh, no, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Well, I just think so. As Yolanda stated, we were connected through a mutual friend, and we both are very passionate about empowering people who have lived through it. And I have a community called Brave Beyond Diagnosis for women living with all sorts of mental illness. And, hearing people's stories and experiences, one is so different to another because depending on where you went to the hospital, what services you were told about, if you had groups beyond, it's so different. And it's so frustrating when there's amazing services like CLC that exist out there that I never knew about still. And now I'm like, not that I'm not listening, but I was, Googling it because there are amazing services and facilities that exist. But I think one of the challenges is that depending on where you go, if you're not introduced to some of these resources and services that exist, you leave on your own. When I was first released from my first treatment center, I didn't have a doctor. I didn't have a psychiatrist. My doctor just moved provinces. I was down. I wasn't ready to advocate for myself. I wasn't in a place to be able to research what was out there. And so you sort of go at it alone. And I think what I love about the CLC is even though there are services for acute when you are in that stage where you need full-on support and you're in hospital, when you're out, you're very much on your own. And I think there is a gap and a huge opportunity to be able to, as you were saying, bring people back to life and take all of their learnings and the strategies and what they learned while they were in that acute situation, but then also be able to recognize they're a person beyond their diagnosis. And that's what we're trying to do in this community. And that's why I'm very excited to learn more and connect with you beyond.
Well, and I would say, like in the spirit of this broader conversation. So, what is that? What is this future of mental health? It is to start to get better connected, to be, mutually supportive. We're called the Collaborative Learning College for a very specific reason, which is we want to work with other people. We don't own the knowledge. We share the knowledge. We give people opportunities to work with us. And and so when you're talking about your program, that's a great example of like, boy, we need to know about one another, because I don't know if I can't imagine that everything that we're doing is going to fit everyone's needs. I think that that's just fantasy, and kind of too prideful. But if we can know about one another, then we can, boy, there's this other program over here that might be a much better fit for you. And if down the road you find that you want to do something with us, that's fantastic. Going back to the piece about community, one of the things that we have enacted in the last short while is community advisory. Hong Fook is involved, Working for Change, Toronto Public Library, McMaster University, et cetera, et cetera. The point being not to just trying to throw out a bunch of big names, but to say, we are involved because we want to become as responsive to the needs of the community as possible, while creating a forum for people who might not necessarily be connecting with one another to do so. And this is our kind of sincere desire to create mutually supportive, reciprocal relationships with people, and to model that all the way across.
And you mentioned a really key word there, community.
Yeah.
And I think that, there has been lots of studies done about the impact of healing in community and the effect of that versus healing in isolation, which is kind of the more current and traditional model of exactly what Carol and I have gone through, and I know many others have gone through as well. And Gabor Mate always talks about that importance of like healing and community. But when it's an area where not everyone is comfortable to share openly or to speak up, one of the questions in the intake form for my Courage Circle is I say, how comfortable are you to share about your journey? And it's a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not comfortable at all, 10 being 100% comfortable. And usually the average is around 3 or 4. And this is actually a really small community. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about how do you promote this way of healing in community and break the stigma, because it kind of happens in tandem so that it can occur together. So yeah, just curious what your thoughts are.
The one of the hallmarks of recovery colleges, and certainly of our recovery college, is to invite people into spaces where they have oftentimes felt really excluded. The fact is that many people that we work with at the Collaborative Learning College and at CAMH in general live deeply marginalized lives. Poverty, stigma, straight up discrimination. You're the other, you're weird, you do drugs, the language around drugs, you're clean or you're dirty. Who wants to be around dirty people? And what we are attempting to do is to change that narrative and to say, please come into spaces where you have not traditionally been accepted, and to feel yourself as being part of a learning community. And sometimes that's just, we're going to hold events in, I don't know, public galleries and libraries, places where people have been kicked out of, or they get really looked over by, security guards. There are big ticket prices to even walk through the door. And we're trying to create spaces where, no, you can come in, you can, check out these things and feel welcome. That is talking about transformational experiences, that can be very transformational for a lot of people. And they can feel grateful and included in a very deep way. This is the starting of community, because like the one of the root words in community is uni. That is, we're like together. And if you don't have that, then it's really hard to feel comfortable where you live, in your own skin, walking down to the street corner. That is in and of itself a stressor, and is going to negatively affect people's um, mental health and their ability to, have a sense of hope, a sense of future, a sense of agency.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you see the entire spectrum in the services that you offer, whereas I find sometimes my view might be quite selective as well. So that's really interesting to hear that. Brian just made a comment here, where there's lack of access to resources, staff, knowledge, could technology play a role in providing some form of help or support in an accessible and cost-effective way? I know Brian actually was building an app a while ago. I think that project has been paused, but I think he was working with my psychiatrist, Dr. Senior. So what do you think about that, Andrew?
I think that one of the weird gifts of COVID was the emergence of this kind of technology, like where it's just like the way that we get together.
Yeah.
And the we work with a lot of people who, I don't know, have a hard time getting out of their basement. And now they don't have to in order to participate. If they have a connection, they can log on. They don't even have to turn on their cameras. We like it when people turn on their cameras. We love to see people. We want that kind of communication and that kind of human connection, but it's not required. So that is, we're meeting people where they're at. And technology is a great way of doing that. Of course, though, is there another side to that? There is definitely a digital divide in our community. Haves and have-nots, people who do not possess devices. Web access is expensive. And these are the realities that a lot of people are working within. And then there's just basic digital skills. We just need to understand that as much as many of us are very adept and have no problem getting into whatever platform, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, whatever it is, that is incredibly intimidating to other people because they don't have the basic digital literacy skills to do so. So this is just acknowledging that there's more work to do. I don't think that technology is the be all and end all. It's the thing that will, solve all of our problems. And, we all know that there's a dark side to technology as well. We find people don't want to even search for, I don't know, help for a mental health problem because they're concerned that those searches are going to, come and bite them in the butt when they go back onto Facebook or Instagram and they're served up, specific kinds of advertising that will, in essence, out them to people who are sharing their network. That's a definite problem.
There's always two sides to a coin, right? It's like a
Yep.
double-edged sword for sure.
Pretty
Never a
consistent.
simple solution. What I'd love to do now, if our audience is up for it, is if you could pop it into the chat, something you would hope for the future of mental health. And I'm going to queue up the video with Dr. Gabor Mate to share with you what he said. But before that, and while you're thinking, I would love to share with you what my psychiatrist, Dr. Senior, said as well. He's a really smart guy. I really like him. He wanted to be here to join as well, but he's on vacation, which is good, well-deserved. So Dr. Senior said he hopes there would be more early interventions to help parents, new parents, to learn more about attachments and give them good support so that they can help support their kids better. And as we all know, the impact of parents on our everything. And it's so important that we actually learn a bit more about that before our kids are older. And there's been a lot of studies done on childhood experiences, especially like ACE, adverse childhood experiences, has a huge impact on the onset of mental health and other physical health conditions as well. So that's what Dr. Senior shared with me that he would love for me to share with you all. And so if you have any other ideas, please pop it into the chat. I'm going to just share the video now with Dr. Gabor Mate. So just to give you the context, I've met him in person, but this particular time I followed him to Oakville where he was doing a book talk, and I was at the very back row of like this 500 people audience, and somehow I got picked to ask him this question about the future of mental health and diagnosis, which I thought was like really cool. So you're hearing me ask him the question, and then he's going to answer the question as well. My husband said that I'm quite the stalker of Gabor Mate, which I own. That's totally true. I mean, I love his work. And I know some of you already know this, but I'm in his 1-year training program for compassionate inquiry, which has really changed my life. So here it is.
And I was wondering if you had a magic wand to transform the way mental illnesses are diagnosed, how would it be diagnosed instead of giving it a one-dimensional label like bipolar disorder, like schizophrenia? I really wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Sure, thank you. The Compassion Inquiry Program that was mentioned is a therapeutic method I developed that is studied by therapists and counselors internationally in about 80 different countries. The question of diagnosis. So the first thing to understand about mental health diagnoses is that they don't explain anything. They describe things. So I've mentioned my own diagnosis with ADD. So Gabor has ADD. How do we know that he's got ADD? Because he tunes out and he's got poor impulse control. Why does he have poor impulse control, and why does he tune out? Because he's got ADD. How do we know he has ADD? Because he tunes out, so-and-so is bipolar. How do we know? Because their moods go up and down. Why do the moods go up and down? Because they're bipolar. Why do we know? So these diagnoses, the problem with the diagnosis is their descriptions. And they may be accurate and even helpful descriptions, but they don't explain a thing. Secondly, they don't define the person. Nobody is bipolar. Bipolarity is a process that happens in them. It happens for good reasons, always related to trauma. If we deal with that trauma, perhaps the symptoms will themselves abate or become much more manageable. Not perhaps, for sure. So the problem with diagnostics is that physicians actually think they explain things, they don't. Patients think they explain things, they don't. And secondly, it doesn't take into account, I mean, the DSM, which is the Psychiatric Bible catalog of mental health conditions, never mentions trauma, except specifically in post-traumatic stress disorder. But every mental health diagnosis, I'm saying, has trauma at its source. So the biggest thing I would do is to recognize the connection between trauma and the various symptoms and manifestations that we call mental illnesses. We wouldn't confuse those diagnoses with explanations. We would look at the real explanation in a person's life, and we would address those issues. Along with, sometimes we'll give medications. They can be helpful. I find them helpful sometimes.
I know it was a little bit hard to hear, but basically what he's saying is instead of diagnosing the symptoms, to find really the reason behind it. And so in his research about trauma, his work around addictions and linkage to trauma is what he is talking about here is to really look beyond just the symptoms. So that's Dr. Gabor Mate. So just want to read what Jennifer said for the future. Thank you so much for sharing this, Jennifer. Where we can talk openly about mental illness without shame or embarrassment. It's better, definitely better in the recent years. Yeah, I agree. I think there's still a ways to go, but it's definitely getting better. And Carol said, I would love for there to be more consistent care and accessible resources for all. Also, better education for family members and colleagues and individuals in general on how to understand and deal with and in their lives living with mental illness. Finally, more effective services to support those going back to work, post long-term mental health leave. Yeah, definitely, like 100%. That's why a couple of weeks ago, my friend who is the CEO of a global tech company, Nulogy, came to talk about how he handles mental health. And one of the things he shared with me before the talk is there's like no manual on this, right? Like he doesn't know. It's always case by case. And it's always depends on the compassionate level of the leader. And yesterday, I was actually just at his company doing a whole presentation on mental health and communication around needing support. And it's just often not what is being done in companies or for leaders, kind of like what Andrew was sharing earlier. A lot of the services that are out there are more for acute care in mental health, but that's kind of the case in a lot of industries. You tend to have funding for when issues are already flaring up, but what is underneath the water in that iceberg are things that you're not funded for or things to do. So that's why I think the Recovery College is such a special model, because it's proactively addressing an issue before it blows up, you know? So I really love that. And in the last minute, I would like to just quickly mention the Courage Circle. So I'm actually finishing the first cohort of the Courage Circle tomorrow, and then starting a new bi-weekly model, which is actually co-created with the people in the Courage Circle. I'm taking a page out of Andrew's book to do that. So it's a bi-weekly model, and we're gonna meet every other Friday. And as always, there is financial assistance. I actually have a form you can fill out if you need to apply for financial assistance. And I don't want to turn anyone away for their ability to pay, because I really want to be able to heal in community together, because selfishly it benefits me as well. And Carol's going to be there next week. So, and actually a couple of other guest speakers that were here. So that's the Courage Circle. And the link will be included in the follow-up along with the CLC link that Andrew shared. So I just want to take a moment to thank Andrew so much for being so generous with your time and support. And I also look forward to working with you one day in some capacity. So yeah, I'm manifesting that, Andrew. It's happening.
We're doing it right now.
I know we are, and there'll be more, lots more. I'll keep bugging you. It's not going to end, and now Carol's going to bug you too.
That's great. Yeah, I welcome it.
So thank you so much for being here and for supporting this whole process. So this is the last week. I might do other talks along the way, but it's not going to be weekly anymore. I still need help to grieve the loss of my friend. I thought 9 weeks was going to be enough time, but shockingly, it's not. I actually was just crying this morning about her. So I think I will continue the talks, but just in a less frequent manner. But I really appreciate everyone's support, and you have been so amazing. And thank you so much, Andrew, as well. So have a beautiful day, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you so
Take
much
care.
for having us.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciate it. So I'll send you the recording once it's done.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Look forward to
thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Bye. Take care.